Welcome back, gamers, to another episode of Gamefulness, where we talk about everything related to the gaming industry, latest gaming news, and a video game review almost every week. Alright, I gotta give it to you. This episode is coming up a little bit later than usual, but I was not expecting the amount of time required to put together this one, and I wanted to get it right. Since there's a lot to cover and I tried really hard to make the most out of it in a way that I can express all the feelings that I have about this game. As you already know, we're gonna talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake and my opinions about this classic reimagined. But first, the latest and most relevant news. Some of you may already know about the problems that Last of Us 2 is having on the internet and all the issues coming up with the game plot being leaked, and with it, a lot of sites had spoilers and videos about the game that it was almost inevitable for me to take a glimpse. Don't worry, I'm not gonna spoil it to you, I'm not gonna link anything here, you deserve better than me, but it made me realize that this could be a potentially big problem for Sony, especially with the delay issue pushing it all the way back to the PS5 originally. But they are already on the lookout and tracking every single site that has all the information and taking them down, so at least they're doing damage control right now. And then on the same day, Sony and Naughty Dog randomly announced the release date for The Last of Us 2 on June 19 and Ghost of Tsushima on July 17. Could this be the best case scenario for this game after all of this? I don't know, that's something that we will have to wait till June to see what happens. Moving on, there's a new rumor about a new Perfect Dark reboot that is currently being developed by Xbox Game Studios for the Xbox Series X console. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, this has a lot of potential, and I hope they can bring a whole new game filled with all the excitement and nostalgia from the original one on the N64. And I mean, what better year for remakes and reboots? And in some good news, Bethesda is donating $1 million to Disrelief. Way to go, man. Thank you. But that will not make it up just yet for what you did us in Fallout 76. But hey, it's a start. But there's also bad news. Nintendo has begun to shut down the eShop on the Wii U and 3DS in select regions starting this July. Unfortunately, my gaming friends, this is the end, so make sure you get your games while you can and enjoy them, because this is going to be inevitable. And really sad also, because I still remember all the great games on the Wii eShop that I couldn't get. But hey, that's Nintendo. I mean, on the PS3 shop, you can still purchase all the PS1 classics right away, but I don't want to jinx it, so let's just embrace it and make the best out of it, and hope Nintendo can give us the N64 and GameCube Virtual Console on the Switch soon enough at least. And one last thing, Odin is with us, brothers. Assassin's Creed Valhalla trailer has just been revealed today, and by the looks of it, it promised to be another spectacular entry like the Origins or Odyssey, this time on a Nordic setting, and I can't wait to play this on the next console generation. I mean, how awesome is just to have the main character be a Viking. So here's a sneak peek. I'll link the full trailer on the social media accounts, so make sure to follow us to stay up to date.
They murder and kill blindly. They scar the lands of England. Lands they will never defend, never love. The time has come to speak to them in a language they will understand.
So those were the latest news. Now let's get to the review. Final Fantasy VII, let's talk about it. Final Fantasy VII is without a doubt the most recognized game in the Final Fantasy series, and the most influential for new adepts to the saga. First, let me just say that this new game doesn't replace the original classic one from the 90s. This is a whole new interpretation, even though it pays a lot of tribute to the original one, hence the remake name. But in sorts, it's a new game of its own. Since there's a lot to cover, we're gonna break it down to get all the aspects as much as possible. There was so much hype around this title, and no wonder. That's a really long time for a game to be released, and I hate to be the one, but it's not perfect. And if anybody's saying that this game is 10 out of 10, It's just having a blinded opinion, praising the saga for pure nostalgia and not this game in particular. This game is nothing short of great, but at the same time carries a lot of flaws. First, let's recap where it all began. The PS1 classic. A groundbreaking state-of-the-art masterpiece for the JRPG genre, which for the time had incredible pre-rendered backgrounds and animations, and with the timed/turn-based battle system that made it so popular among others. All this, merged with one hell of an amazing story, made this game an instant classic, that to this point is still considered by many the best game of the Final Fantasy series. And you can still get the original one from the PS Store, but since there has been several remastered versions on almost every single platform, and with a couple of new improvements added, you can choose which one you want to pick. So here you can see a comparison of the classic one and the remastered version, and clearly the poly designs are way more clean on the characters, and the whole menu and letters looks way more sharp. But the background looks a little too blurry in my opinion, and they look still better in the original one. To make it more compelling to the new consoles, they added new features that sometimes feels like cheat codes, but hey, they work in these days where we don't have as much time and patience like we used to when we played games back in the days. So now you can speed up the game 3 times, activate the no encounter option to explore as much as you like, avoiding the well-known in Final Fantasy excessive battle spawn, and lastly, an option to fight the whole battle with your limit meter full all the time, which will makes every fight feels like a piece of cake. I'm currently playing both, and it's up to a personal preference, but there are some caveats of choosing the old hardcore version now than to go for the more updated one. But it's up to you to decide, try them both, and make up your own mind and relive the original story. But after decades, delays, and a lot of anticipation, it's finally here. It is truly a new entry for the hardcore fans and as well accessible for newcomers. Enter Final Fantasy Remake. Let's begin with the good. This game does a lot of things right. The soundtrack is simply spectacular and nothing short of being one of the best original scores on a game. The characters, although they might feel a little bit over the top, but hey, it's Final Fantasy, that's the style. They all have moments to shine. Even the ones that they were mostly secondary had their 15 minutes of fames and iconic moments. Side note here, I'm a huge fan of Breaking Bad, and hearing the voice of Badger, aka Matt Jones, the actor now being the voice of Wedge, is just so cool and gave the character so much heart.
Hey, I'm doing it for you guys.
The combat is just after the story as one of the best elements in this title. The mechanics combines perfectly the new and the old. Put it this way, the combat in Final Fantasy XV was something new but not polished entirely. There was some good ideas but just didn't work completely. But then Final Fantasy VII brings the fast action strategy to mix it up, where now you have to build ATB and actively switch partners to select attacks, use materia, items, and commands. This feels different from the original turn-based RPG at first, but then it becomes natural and is one of the things that makes this game unique. It kind of resembles the bat system on Fallout 4, but in a very Final Fantasy way, and the upgrade system is pretty much straightforward, but I like it. I have no troubles with it. And then there's a story, filled with gorgeous cinematic style, subtly taken from Final Fantasy VII Advent Children movie, but way more modernized and with one of the most impressive animations. The way this game does the storytelling here is what kept me playing, not minding the hiccups and broken parts of it. And sometimes, with the new elements included to the story, it might feel convoluted and ambiguous at some points, but it all kind of makes sense at the end. Sort of. In a way that is good, since you get paid homage for the original game, but now you have this new unknown journey that will have you truly excited for what's going to happen next. But precisely, this is the Achilles heel of this game. There's only 2 scenarios. This can either go incredibly right or tremendously wrong. Now let's go where this game really drops the ball, the bad. The first thing that surfaced the internet as soon as it was released were those weird texture issues, killing such a technically improved game. Why there are these doors that looks like PS1 textures? And some even say that it was on purpose and a kind of an Easter egg from the original, but hell no. There were other parts where the textures never render. I think it's something simple that a future patch might fix it, but until now, it's still an issue and kind of ruins the beautiful game with such an impressive environments. Then we have the absolute boring and mediocre side quest. I will have to say that I did all of them just trying to see if the majority were not horrible, but I'm afraid to say that they all were. I think the only exception are the ones involving a minibus fight and the wall market one, which is a nice homage, but some of them even borders in the complete stupid and simple, with absolutely no fun at all in doing them. And then, in this day and age, 2020, in the verge of technology, humanity about to leap into our new next evolutionary step, but we're still struggling with camera problems in games. And it happens so much in combat that you get used to it. But all in all, it's not the biggest deal breaker factor. What almost did it for me was the really unnecessary actions you have to do to move across sections. It just doesn't work. It's tedious to have to slow down the way you traverse and cut in the pace of the cinematic action feeling. How you move through the tight spaces is annoying, to not say unnecessary, and the controls feels slow and almost unresponsive. I just wish there was some sort of pressing one button and wait or a cutscene than to have to do them at all. They try to make a more immersive experience that backfire on its purpose. I mean, why has it had to drag the story so much with boring gameplay? Either put more short fights in between like the classic ones, or more cinematics and not such long scenarios that are completely inert. The map system for me was useless, and the only way you fast travel with chocobos, they show all as Sam's delivery service and not the name of the specific station in the map, which is already confusing, or I just simply don't know what I was doing. By the way, why in the hell we can ride chocobos on Final Fantasy 15 and here we can't? I'll tell you why. That damn Carol Baskin. Also, there's not even a cinematic for when you ride the stagecoach. You just hear a cry sound from the chocobos and that's it. That's disappointing and frankly just lazy. This game could be easily 30 hours of pure enjoyable gameplay and cutscenes. By removing a lot of the dull side quests and forced movement actions that are interrupted with cutscenes right away, and voila, then we will have a perfect game.
We agreed to disagree. So, you want another drink?
And finally, we got the big elephant in the room. Final Fantasy VII Remake is based only on the portion of Midgar, which in the original is done just under 6 hours. And this got some fans furious, which is understandable, but perhaps it's more of a marketing issue, but by no means this game is incomplete. It packs a pretty decent main run of 45 plus hours and all the content left to do and revisit. It is to me a complete enjoyable game of its own. And the way the story is now set, to have more parts, that's even better. I just hope the next entries fixes a lot of the issues here, and without spoiling anything, that the way the plot is going doesn't end up being a mistake if we get some lazy writing and execution for aiming to a more commercial approach in the long run. So that's it for the Final Fantasy VII review. Indeed, a beautiful and divisive game. What do you think? Is it worth the full price? Are you okay with the changing of the story into different parts? Let's talk about it in the comment section. And if you're new to the channel, what you need to do is hit that subscribe button right now. And if you enjoyed the video, slap that like button like it's...
I'll explain everything later.
This is your host, Pablo Strive, and as always, game on. See you next week for a prize. Da 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 da. One more thing, we might need to rewatch Wreck-It Ralph. And as you know, I couldn't leave you without the best piece of advice ever. If you're ever gonna write a